Okay, let's see what we have here. We have a poem that in your book it's on page 942 and it's called the Facebook Sonnet. It's by Sherman Alexie. Sherman Alexie is a famous uh, American Indian writer, and he is from the Pacific Northwest. This is a sonnet that is, as far as I can tell, was published in the New Yorker first. You can visit it there if you want to. But let's read this and see what we find in it. The Facebook Sonnet. Welcome to the endless high school reunion. Welcome to past friends and lovers, however kind or cruel. Let's undervalue and unmend the present. Why can't we pretend every stage of life is the same? Let's exhume, resume, and extend childhood. Let's all play the games that occupy the young. Let fame and shame intertwine. Let one's search for God become public domain. Let church.com become our church. Let sign up, sign in, and confess here at the altar of loneliness. Okay, so obviously this is a postmodern poem in the sense that it's even got the date up there. It's like 2011. Okay, so um, it's obviously in the world of Facebook, right? That's the easiest way to see that it's a pretty new poem. Do you know all the words in the second stanza? Well, first let's look at the structure. It's a sonnet. It has these quatrains. There's one, two, three, four lines, right? So that stands as a quatrain, then another, and another, and that's three of them, and then a rhymed couplet at the end, right? So that's one of our sonnet, one of our common sonnet structures. There is rhyme: school, friends, cruel, unmend. But I read it more to the end of the sentence, or I didn't emphasize the last syllable to emphasize the rhyme, but it's there, and it's that means that there's a classic construction here. And if we want to emphasize to count syllables, we can say, "Welcome to the endless high school." Okay, and we can see that iambic pattern there. Remember, the iambic is the bum 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 that we have. And if it's five of those, which is 10 syllables total, then we have iambic pentameter. Um, if it's not rhyming, we have blank verse. Now we're going to read a lot of blank verse when we get to Shakespeare later, but this is a poem, in other words, that comes from the Facebook world, the more modern world, and yet it uses a structure that's been around for a long time, hundreds and hundreds of years, right? Let's see some of those words I was wondering if everybody knew. It says, let's exhume, resume, and extend, right? So the tough word there might be exhume. That's to dig up. So when we dig up a body, that's the word for that, exhume, right? Was there another one? Shame, intertwine, public domain. The concept of public domain, maybe some people don't know this. This is when something is not copyrighted and therefore owned by one person or a company or something, and it's for everybody to use if they want to, right? So that line for let one search for God become public domain. That's a reference to let one individual search be part of the whole public record. Everybody can see you doing it, right? And then let church.com become our church. Now, I'll get back to that in a minute, right? Because we want to start at the beginning a little bit. Um, the endless high school reunion. I've heard people read this before and they end up saying the endless high school. Well, it has both endless high school and endless high school reunion in it. That's partially what happens when you let this line come to a conclusion here, because the endless high school is a phrase that means something by itself, right? But high school reunion is another thing. And in this case, we have the endless high school reunion, right? And I think that's one of the easiest concepts to understand here is that, on Facebook, at any point in time, I or you can, look up people who are from our high school and find out what they're doing, or send a message to them, say, how are you doing? Because of the quarantine, I've thought of different people that I haven't thought of for a long time, just to wonder how they're doing. Um, People that live in different states and all around. But in my case, I usually think more about my college than about my high school. But some people are the opposite. They're always thinking about their high school or even their junior high school, right? But Facebook is a way to let you keep playing that game if you want to, right? Now, line two, welcome to past friends and lovers. I find that line interesting because if they're past friends, the suggestion is they're not current friends, right? Now they could be past and current and future friends, right? But I like the way it adds on the and lovers after that, right? This opens up all kinds of ideas to different people. The dangers sometimes of Facebook, right? I mean, I've had people pop up in recommendations, for friends and things like that, that are people that I hadn't thought of for many years, and sometimes people I don't want to think about, people that for some reason they're a bad moment of my life, or something, right? Or a person who did something to me that I don't like, and now all of a sudden this computer, without knowing it, is popping that person into my view, right? Past friends and lovers. Of course, other people talk about how when you have a partner and you're sitting there looking at your Facebook and past partners are popping up right there on the screen, you may have the new one ask you why the old one is popping up, right? Now it says, however kind or cruel, because the computer's indiscriminate. The computer doesn't know whether someone treated you kindly or cruelly. It just knows that that person is connected to something, to you, in some sort of direct or indirect way, right? Or one person through another, through another. Um, let's undervalue and unmend. Now that sounds like a general, right? Let us undervalue and unmend, but we don't yet know what the direct object is to that, right? But then it's going to come to in the next stanza. It says the present. So I always think of the way sometimes people say, live for today. Make sure you appreciate the present, the moment. Be mindful, thoughtful in the moment, right? And I think this is maybe a line that makes the most sense, or most quick sense, if we think of nostalgia, in the sense that that's one of the things you're doing if you think back to your past and how it was and how nice it was. And then if you do, like so many people do, which is fall into what I call golden ageism, where they want to just say how wonderful things were in the past, right? And I don't have a whole lot of patience for that. Sometimes I think I don't have as much patience as I should have. But when I hear people trying to talk about how great it used to be, the implication there is that it was better than the current moment. And that's often when they mention it, because they see something they're not happy about at the moment, and then they think back to the past, right? But often the past had a lot of things that, if we honestly weighed it, we would realize it wasn't such a golden time in every way, or for everyone, for sure, right? Then it says, why can't we pretend every stage of life is the same? Let's exhume, resume, and extend childhood. Now, that's kind of the idea that with timeline and other habits that people have with Facebook. Now, I think also we should remember that this is about Facebook specifically, but there's quite a few things in the nostalgia factory and the networking factory, which is part of how Facebook got started in the first place, right? Where it's all thrown there right in front of you on the screen, or in a very few links that you can hit really quickly, and you have things from your deep past, and you have things from your this morning, basically, right? So I think that's part of how this gets smushed together in a way that Alexie is mentioning that right now, where it says let's exhume. We don't normally think of exhume in usually a sort of nice clean way, right? You don't say, I'm going to go exhume the bulbs from this year so I can plant them next year so beautiful flowers will grow. We usually think of exhume as in something like digging up a dead body, or maybe digging up something that we had reason to bury, right? So this line, exhume, resume, and extend childhood, right? So that childhood becomes a direct object. And what does it mean to dig up childhood? Well, childhood may have a lot of good memories for I hope for everybody listening to this. It does have a lot of good memories, but it might also have painful memories too, right? It might even have trauma. And so the idea of digging it up may or may not be a good idea, right? Be careful what you look for, you just might get it. Then the next line says, let's all play the games that occupy the young. I'm not totally sure what that is. This is the kind of line that I sometimes think of as a litmus test line, or a Rorschach line, where It is part of the stereotype that older people or people with careers and busy jobs don't play social media, games quite as much. I'm not totally sure how true that is. I'm back in a zone I get into every once in a while where people are asking me about rumors that they've heard because they're finding other adults telling them about things. So the rumor could be, what was one of the rumors this week is that the virus wasn't something that grew naturally. That the virus was, of course, human created, something like that, right? And every time I get to this mode, these are adults that are, passing on sometimes even dangerous rumors, right? And definitely scary rumors. And so I'm not sure how much it is a game just of the youth, right? Except maybe if it's specifically talking about relationships, because as you go through life and as you go through stages, even of one relationship, you recognize the distinct parts. Maybe it's not always the same, of course, but the idea that you spend a lot of your energy, your mental energy at the very least, right, trying to hook up or find someone. When you're younger, a lot of people don't spend the same percentage of their time doing that as they get older. So this may be partially what this is referencing, right? Now, let fame and shame intertwine. It already does in a vocabulary, right? Because you have famous and infamous, and they share qualities, right? But this may be a reference to how things that are brought up, whether you're searching or people are sending things to you, um, are some of them are things you're known for in good ways, but sometimes they may be known for something that isn't so great, right? So fame and shame tangled together. Let one's search for God become public domain. I think that's partially a reference to the fact there's so many ways on social media you can tick a little box and it advertises something about you, your belief in God or your disbelief in God or whatever it happens to be. I know that doesn't Facebook still have like relationship status and things like that? You're telling the world. You're not just telling a few people you know. You're telling so many people, right? There are some parameters sometimes that can be set as far as who can visit your information, but we're learning more and more that if somebody wants your information, there's a lot of people that can get it, right? The next line, let church.com become our church. I think it's very telling that it says .com because com means commerce. It's the idea of the world of money and profit and things like that, right? So church.com makes me think in terms of church as a business rather than church as something of a different metaphor, like church is your family, church is your sanctuary, something like that, right? Um, the last two lines, then the rhyme couplet. Let's sign up, sign in, and confess here at the altar of loneliness. Um, I don't know. I think, if you read this poem in one mood, you might be positive about what's going on with your social media. And then you might read it in another mood and think, well, he's being too harsh in this poem, right? Um, I think that's going to happen most of the time to people reading this. However, we do unfortunately have more and more information telling us that there is an awful lot of loneliness that may be manufactured or at least, fired up and enhanced by paying attention and maybe paying more and more attention to your your personal self on the web. And this can be somebody I was talking to yesterday said something about the number of likes they got, right? And it was for a meal. And that's one of our cliches now, actually, right? Is people taking pictures of their own food, right? But it's the maybe waiting or worrying about whether people are paying attention to you and giving you a kind of a validation from the outside. So this poem is mentioning that. Now, what happens to a poem like this where you put together line by line by line some of the things it means, right? Well, it's great then if you pull back and you can try to look at it from a broader perspective. So this is the kind of thing where they say, make sure that you don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. Meaning you get so close to a tree, all you can see is that one tree, right? And you can't see the forest. So we back up and we see this. These things all tie together. It's not a greatly mysterious poem, right? But now when you read it, All of those things you've put together as you examined it line by line or sentence by sentence or idea by idea, they're all in your head together at the same moment. So the people who like digging into poetry, or maybe they like modernist poetry, which was different than poetry before it in the sense of it seemed to require so much of the reader's attention, investment, analysis. But then what happens is you're putting together a reading, or you're putting together a meaning with the writer. The reader and the writer are sort of putting it together, right? Now, of course, what's constructed is different for each reader, and whatever the writer consciously or subconsciously thought about and put into it, it's also then going to be uh, changed, altered, bent, flavored by the reader who's reading it, right? But anyways, you end up constructing this thing, and I think then you have a greater sense of ownership that you've worked on it, right? You've tried hard and you've gotten to something. But now when you read it, you don't have to do that every time. You have a reading, and so it all comes at you, maybe fast and hard, or it does. One of my metaphors is the tiny explosions that the little things in a poem can do, which can keep adding up. And you can end up reading a poem like this one, where each line means a number of things to me. And it's like a crescendo of fireworks, these little explosions going off here and there and here and there. And as I go through life and I come back to this poem, maybe I have more things to add to it. Experiences with social media, my own experiences, but also watching my kids and worrying about my kids, and telling myself sometime, don't let Facebook do what it can do. Don't look for things that maybe would be better off faded into history, right? But it also, this poem doesn't knock Facebook out for me. I mean, I'm glad now that we have the quarantine that some of this technology is actually allowing people to stay in more contact, right? So um, I'll be setting up at least one call in the next couple of days with my mother, so she can visit with FaceTime or Duo or Zoom or something like that with the grandkids. We're only 76 miles away, but at the moment we can't just easily go see her. So it's nice that we can see her, right? And we can post photos, and she can go up on Facebook, and people post jokes and everything else, right? So I think it's a cynical poem in a way. It's got some negatives that it's reminding us of, right? But at the same time, we don't have to let it completely color our understanding of Facebook. We can even write our own poem if we want to. Okay. Well, I'll talk to you later.